Welcome to the Mindset Game podcast. It is an incredible honor to introduce you to Jim Cathcart. Jim is one of the top 5 most award-winning speakers in the world. His TEDx talk, titled How to Believe in Yourself, has over 2.6 million views, and his 25 books are translated into multiple languages, including 3 international bestsellers. He is a certified virtual presenter and past national president of the National Speakers Association, and his PBS television programs, podcast appearances, and radio shows have reached millions of success seekers around the world. Jim is an executive MBA professor at California Lutheran University School of Management and serves as their first entrepreneur in residence, which is an awesome honor. He has been inducted into the Sales and Marketing Hall of Fame in London for his pioneering work with his concept of relationship selling. And he's also in the Professional Speakers Hall of Fame and has received multiple outstanding honors, well-deserved honors, including the Cavett Award and the Golden Gavel Award. And Jim, I cannot say enough about how grateful I am for all that you do, not only for the speaking community worldwide, but also for humanity worldwide, because the messages that you share are so important for each of us to really embody and practice, for us to have even more harmony, more unity, more love and compassion in our world, and of course to have even better solutions. And so welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you for the spirit you bring to this, because that's you just created a beautiful space for people to think more deeply and more meaningfully about what they hear as we are sharing ideas.
Yeah. And you've spoken, obviously, to many, many audiences worldwide and have had a chance to build a relationship with many people worldwide. Mm-hmm. And so if we were to start kind of a very general, kind of blank canvas kind of question, what would you want every leader in our world to learn and to know, if there was one most important nugget?
I would want them to put foremost in their concerns. In other words, number one about what you care about is living a meaningful and satisfying life. When I was speaking in China, I did a series of lecture tours over 5 years, 19 separate tours from the US to China mainland, 23 major cities. And I spoke to thousands and thousands and thousands of people, because every audience was at least 1,000, some of them 3,000. And I would speak through an interpreter for 6 hours a day. So that means 3 hours of material and 3 hours of pausing while the interpreter covered her or his part. But I connected with those people in every kind of profession you can imagine across the entirety of China, from Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan over on there on the west side to Beijing, up to, way north of there, and then down to Hong Kong and Kunming and Lijiang and Chengdu, and I can go on all day making Chinese sounds. Well, what I found at first was that I was just another old white guy in a suit from America speaking about success. I asked my agent, what do they expect me to teach them? Oh, leadership and sales and communication. Okay, but that's just English 101, math 101. That's just back to the fundamentals. And I thought, now these are emerging urban success seekers. They are people who a generation ago were living in an agricultural society and went from that to an industrial and a post-industrial society that has businesses of all types, worldwide organizations. And they're young, coming up through the ranks. The oldest among them was in probably their early 50s. The others in their 20s and 30s and 40s. So as I spoke for the first few weeks, I found I got good responses, and I was, having a good time as well. But what they were really responding to at the end, when they ask questions, because they won't ask during, they think it's rude. Even if you ask them to ask, could I have your questions? Nothing. And then you say, okay, we're done. They all rush to the front to ask questions. The questions were about living a meaningful and satisfying life. And one day I was in Kunming And I always had a security detail protecting me from the crowd that wanted to tear off a piece of me or get a selfie or something. Kind of like being Elvis back in the 50s or the Beatles in the 60s. Anyway, there were always somewhere between 8 and 18 people that would form a phalanx, and I would march into the arena in the middle of that, and they would spread the crowd, and I'd mess with them. I'd take off running and run toward the stage, literally. I'm dressed in a suit and everything, and I'm, running, and they're running, trying to catch up and trying to figure out, what do we do? Teacher's misbehaving. And I'd get on stage and we'd all have a big laugh out of that. But in Kunming, when we took the morning break, my interpreter, Kitty, said, "Jim, see that guard over there?" I said, "The Rock?" She said, "Yeah," because he was like this, immovable. I mean, nobody was getting past The Rock. And she said, "Yeah, The Rock." She said, "He was talking to me on the elevator. And he said he's never heard ideas like this before. Ideas about living a meaningful and satisfying life. He'd learned techniques, he'd learned broad concepts, but not personal on that level." And she said he told me it moved him very deeply. So I waited until everyone had finished their snacks, and I just looked for a moment to be alone with him with nobody looking. And so I went over and I stood in front of him and I did this. "Thank you." And he looked at me and his face started to melt and he started to cry. And so I looked around and I pulled him in and held him, and he started to sob like that. And I held him until he got control again. And then I pushed him back to arm's length and I did that salute that they do over there. And he did the same, and we went our separate ways. Okay. So we had our moment. I thanked him. He responded, and, we're done for now. So I went back downstairs and gave the rest of my speech that day and put a lot more emphasis on the part about living a meaningful and satisfying life. But I said to the audience, you have to respect your government. You have to respect your family, your ancestors and predecessors. You have to respect your employer. But you also have to respect your gift, because that's your ability to change the world in a good way. And if you don't use your gift, you deny all of us the benefits that you could have provided while you were here. So honor your gift. So I finished my seminar that day. Kitty, my interpreter, says, "What'd you do to The Rock?" I said, "I didn't break him, I promise." She said, "No, seriously, what'd you do?" And I told her. She said, "Jim, he would die for you." I said, "Oh my gosh, what a responsibility." She said, "You mean an honor?" I said, "No. I mean, yeah, it's an honor, but what a responsibility. Because if I'm saying things that people are making life-changing decisions based on what I said or did, I've got a tremendous and terrible responsibility to them to be honorable, intelligent, and proper in what I do. Whoa, I'm going to take me more seriously." And I did. And that was very moving to me. Of course, it was moving to him. But wow. So when you think about what executives need to know, think about, look, they can go to any MBA school, they can go to any Wharton or, name your place, and they can get the latest concepts in management and in systems theory and process control and, whatever, AI in the marketplace. But in the final analysis, the only thing that matters is, are you glad you did that? Did that make your life better? Did it touch someone else in a way that left the world a little bit better because you existed? If not, why'd you do that when you could have done something else? Well, that's what everyone expected. We'll do it with more dignity. Do it with a higher level of dedication. Do it with more a sense of honor in what you're doing. Be an example that other people can say, "I don't know her or I don't know him, but I want to be like them, because wow, look at how well they are affecting the world." So that's where great industries and empires come from, not from being Genghis Khan and killing off everybody that opposed you, but from being, I don't know, Mahatma Gandhi and drawing everyone toward you, right?
Yeah.
So if you would be great, as my friend Nito Kubain, president of High Point University, says, walk hand in hand and side by side with people who are great. Be like them.
And for me, you are one of them. And so again, thank you for being here. And I think that what you shared with us, this beautiful example, is really of like at the heart of it all, what is most important. And sometimes we can get so caught up in all of the stuff and forget what's right in front of us or what is possible for us when we connect at a heart level with people, when we just take the time to do that and to connect with ourselves.
Yeah.
With those gifts. Many of us desire more than anything else to figure out what is my purpose, what is it that I'm here for, and so for those individuals, what advice or insight, or at least first step, do you have for them?
You walked right into my web. I have so much to share about that. Come into my parlor, said the spider to the fly. The popular book, Start With Why, Simon Sinek's message. That's behind everything. Not the book, but the concept. When I am doing mentorship, which I do as my primary profession now, I still give speeches, of course, but what I'm leading to is to help people one-to-one as much as I can. I always begin with the same question. What do you want? And they tell me what they want. And I say, why? And they tell me why. And I say, why does that matter? And they tell me why. And I keep asking why until we can't get a better answer. And I say, okay, there's your reason, right? So it's kind of like you asked a moment ago, what's the question or what's the idea? I want to find a little item here. I took a photograph of my note pages from 1974, August of 1974, a seminar I attended in Little Rock, Arkansas. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but I just want to validate that this is August of 1974. See it up in the corner?
I do, yes.
Right? And it's Adventures and Attitudes, a seminar that was developed by Leo Hauser and Bob Conklin and Bob Pike, who was a friend of mine.
I'm so sorry, by the way, for your loss.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. What a dear man. So here's what I put down. In 1974, as a 28-year-old, my purpose in life is to affect other people in a way that will make them, just a second, more aware of their potential and make them more honest and considerate in dealing with others. It will make this a better world to live in, gain me respect, gain them respect, and cause people to care more about other people. This may be a bit vague, but it's an area I'd love to pursue. If I can stay in a position to lead, guide, or counsel others, I can accomplish this goal. Now think for a moment. That was 50 years ago. It's still my goal. Who knew? 28-year-old me wrote down a purpose statement that is still valid 50 years later. Are you kidding me? I mean, wow. And so I said, I want to be one of the best known, most admired, and influential people involved in the field of training and development. And on many occasions, I have achieved that status over time. And here's another page from that. The top of the page, there's a question that says, I will retire at. Don't know if you can read it.
I I see 1,000,000 on there, or I see what's on top. Never.
And I'm 77 years old today, and son of a gun, I am not retired.
That's right.
Wow. So when I talk about these things, I also live these things, so this is not just theory. This is something that I've honestly practiced all my life. And thank heavens I had the insight back in those days as a young adult to get a glimpse at what I really cared about and to find a path. My vehicle has been primarily first the Junior Chamber of Commerce, JCs, back when they were huge with 350,000 members. I started as a local chapter member and became director of leadership training at their national headquarters 2 years later. Wow, 2 years. And then I went into this field, professional speaking and authorship in the success training field. And I've done that ever since. And as you know, we mentioned earlier, 3,500 convention speeches around the world, written 25 books. Wow, what a blessing. You could say, well, Jim, you were just lucky you got in the business at the right time. Correct. But I was in the business at the right time with the right spirit and the right willingness to right character, to apply myself, be willing to fail, be willing to struggle, be willing to be embarrassed and look stupid until finally I overcame those, knowing there are more of those along the path for me. So bring it. That all you got?
And Jim, you had something else, which was a clear and meaningful intention, that which is bigger than yourself, and a determination to work toward that. And I think that it requires a certain level of faith, a certain level of belief, especially when our starting point is one where we don't yet have evidence that we can achieve that which we envision.
By the way, if you have a goal that you know how to achieve, it's not a goal, it's a to-do. A goal is something that should inspire you, that you have no clue whether you can achieve it or not. Figure it out on the way there.
And I think that's all the fun. This podcast is called The Mindset Game, because once you learn how to do these things, how to create inner certainty and uncertainty, how to build those relationships, how to connect with yourself, all of that, then it all becomes fun. Because you know how to handle stuff when it comes up, and you know how to take it a little lighter, and and not to take things so seriously.
Pardon the interruption, but when I was a young adult with those goals, I didn't know how to achieve them. But I did know that the way I was taught to look at the world, myself and things in general, was very limited. My dad was a telephone repairman. He had been an officer in the Army. He was a good man, but he didn't aspire to great things, or at least he didn't express them. And mom was a homemaker who had grown up poor in Louisiana, and she didn't aspire to great things. And so I was never encouraged, go for the brass ring, set the big goals. I was just told, be a nice person, be a good citizen, be a good neighbor, be a friend. And so I figured I would just live a very statistically normal life and then get out of the way for other people. And then heard Earl Nightingale on the radio one day, a little inspiring radio show. And he said, if you'll spend 1 hour extra every day studying your chosen field, 5 years from now, you'll be a leading expert. And I took him at his word and started studying the field of personal development, applied behavioral science. And sure enough, 3 years later, I was a national senior program manager in charge of leadership training for 350,000 JCs. Good Lord. And then 2 years after that, I was a full-time speaker. And then I started, writing books and creating my own material, doing my own research. Years later, bought a psychological research firm, and it worked in collaboration with a team of researchers to do some breakthrough things that became my book, The Acorn Principle. And so I knew at first I had to retrain my thinking. So what I did was I bought You can see along the top shelf up here what looks like books. Those are little leather looking, they're vinyl, but they look like leather cassette packs. And they have audio cassettes. Remember cassettes? Of Earl Nightingale. And I listened to those. Each is about 20 minutes long. I listened to them 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. One message over and over and over, like a record I enjoyed, until that one sunk in. Then I'd switch to another. And I did that for at least 1,000 hours, at least, over a few years. And that constant input of positive, potential seeking thinking just completely shifted my worldview and made me aware of a different mindset, different way of thinking that literally transformed my whole world. My wife, poor thing, when she married me, she expected me to be like I was. And then I transformed into this, achievement junkie. and all of a sudden we're traveling to Monte Carlo, and, we're going riding horses in Montana and motorcycle touring the Alps and all these things. She said, what a ride, keep it going.
That's awesome. And the people in our life helped to make that happen, right? She created the space for you to be able to listen to those recordings, to do what you needed to do, right? We need
and
to.
By the way, I lost a few friends in the process, not completely lost, but I had a circle of friends that were destined to be ordinary. That's what they expected. And so it was going to happen. And when I didn't any longer think that way, they'd say, "Oh, here comes Mr. Motivation again. Let's get busy." So we sort of drifted apart. Still liked each other, just didn't have the same patterns. And I had a whole new set of friends that developed over time that were people that were really into the, "Hey, have you read this? Oh man, you got to meet Vera. She blew my mind the other day. You got to talk to her." And so all of these things just came along with the ride. And the world was different.
And I think all of that is because your inner world was different. As you said, you did the work to prime yourself, to rewire those, conditioned strategies that you grew up with, and in doing so, to believe that it is possible for you. And so it is those inputs that you, with intention and attention, focused on, that then created a different output. And I mean that, of course, also energetically, because we radiate our thoughts and our emotions, this, and in doing so, opportunities open up for us of that similar vibration. And so those new friends that created and opened more doors for you, and of course you did the same for them, because it's always a two-way thing. That is not an accident, and it is not a coincidence. It was created by you with your intention and your meaningful vision for.
Let me, sorry for interrupting again, but you stimulate so many thoughts. I believe life exists throughout the cosmos, that everywhere life exists, but it needs outlets. It needs portals. It needs a doorway like a person or a plant or an animal in order to express itself. Okay. So our job, being a portal for life, is to be the best portal we can be by developing the skills, the discipline, and whatever that allow our talents to be fully expressed, not just partially expressed. And to look at everything we are interested in as a nudge from the life source, however you choose to look at that. I choose to look at that as God, but not as an old guy with a beard up in the clouds, but rather as the creator of life. Okay, so every time you want something sincerely, I don't mean ice cream, because that's not a want. That's it's a trivial want. It's a momentary desire. But every time you sincerely want something enough to work toward it, consider that's a nudge from your creator saying, "Hey, do that." Well, I'm not good at it yet. There's the word. Thank you. So get to work at it and become good at it. Well, what if Answer your questions. Well, what if I'm not good at it at first? Then stay the course and get advice and get help and find resources. Yeah. Okay. Next problem. So if you raise a problem like, what if we get caught in traffic? Then we'll call ahead and let them know we're delayed. What if it rains? Then we'll get wet. What if we get wet? Then we'll dry out. I mean, come on, answer your questions. So whatever it is that you're throwing up as an obstacle, for heaven's sakes, at least answer the question, right? What if the competition's too great? Flank them. Don't go head on. Find an answer. They're out there. So my job as a living being is to allow life to fulfill itself through me. Now, I wasn't destined to be an NBA basketball player because I'm not 6'7" or 7'6". I'm 5'9". Okay, could I do it? Well, maybe I could have when I was younger, but it's just not a worthy goal. But there are things I can be wonderful at, and I ought to really take the time to become wonderful at those. And then there are other things that I like, but I'm not as committed to. For example, I love to play guitar and sing. So I perform professionally with my wife. She sings along with me. We perform in clubs and at private events, and we performed all over the world. And I've sung to thousands of people in China. And I know about maybe 400 or 500 songs I could just do right now without looking at notes. So I'm really into that. However, when you look at the mountain of success, the lowest level of that mountain that's worth aspiring to is competent, which means you're good enough at it to sit at the big kids' table, but they're not going to be asking you to lead the meeting, right? The next level is excellent. Excellent means you're so competent that occasionally you can really be impressive and people go, wow, how'd you do that? Next level is expert, where you could be excellent anytime you want to because you know and have developed the skills to do that. Next level is leading authority, celebrity, star, superstar. So I don't aspire to be a celebrity or star in guitar. I'm totally happy to be competent on most songs and excellent on a few. And so I went for my 75th birthday 2 years ago. I'll pause. Yes, that's 77. So 2 years ago, I had my 75th birthday, and Paula said, my wife, Paula, what do you want to do for your birthday? I said, I want to do a musical show. So we called friends who own a club, and we said, hey, some weeknight when nothing's going on, when you weren't going to make any money anyway, could we come out and do a show and invite our friends, and pay you? They said no. Well, no. But they said, you're opening for us on Saturday night. Main stage, the big show. So Paula and I did a 1-hour performance on Saturday night in front of a packed house with people dancing and all kinds of crazy things going on here in the Austin area at a wonderful club. And I mean, it's just a life memory I'll treasure. But how many people, 75 years old, do something like that to celebrate their birthday? Most of them just go eat something.
True. And you asked for that.
Yeah.
And you made it happen. And I happen to have heard you. Hopefully, if we have time at the end of this conversation, I would love for you to play for our audience, because I got to hear you before we started and you touched my heart.
Oh, thank you.
Almost like, that big hug that you gave the rock. That's kind of what it felt like.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And so there are so many just really meaningful insights that you've shared with us so far today. And one of those is the fact that, as you heard from Earl Nightingale, that we don't yet have to be the superstar at something. We can build on that. And it can take time and effort, right? But when we have the mindset that we can, with time and effort, we'll get there, and we make it a priority, and we set that vision commit to that vision, it will happen. It is the law. I truly believe that. I believe that opportunities show up when we do that. Nudge, as you said, is absolutely given to us. And when we do that with as much love as we can for ourselves and others. So when we stumble and fall, or opportunities don't yet open up, or whatever it might be, that we give ourselves some grace.
And by the way, the quickest way to become nervous and fearful is think about yourself. The quickest way to avoid that is think about the people you're there to serve. When executives come to me for speech coaching, I tell them, I make a statement intentionally outrageous. I say, there's no such thing as a fear of public speaking. And they look at me like, you poor little fool. Of course there is a fear of public speaking. I have it myself. And I say, no, you're not afraid of public speaking. You're afraid of judgment. Because you speak in public every time you're sitting at a dinner table and somebody says, hey, how was your trip to Disneyland? The only difference is you're afraid of being judged if you're giving a speech or a presentation. So stop thinking about you and think about the value you can bring to them. And in doing so, it changes the energy flow. And all of a sudden, hey, I feel perfectly comfortable. I could do this for a living.
It's.
And by the way, everybody that's listening to this, they can get a free copy of my book on speaking. And it's not a book about how to give a speech. It's a book about how to be a speaker and deal with all the things that we have to deal with, like people running overtime and the building catching on fire and somebody getting your introduction wrong and distractions in the middle of the meeting and personal illness just before you get on stage, all those kind of things, laryngitis. It's called What to Do When You're the Speaker. And they get it at this address, free.cathcart.com. It's that simple. Just go there and download the whole book for free, or buy it on Amazon, and buy 100, please, and give it to all your friends.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Thank you.
You're
and
welcome.
It demonstrates again that spirit that you live by. And it is, I think, that spirit that can help us to activate that which is innate inside of us. So that divine gift, if you will, that, as you said, we all have. I too believe that we're all born with that. And I often find that when we focus on the other, on others, and on something that is bigger than ourselves, then opportunities show up where we become conscious of what that gift may be. Somebody may reflect that back, right, to us, like, oh, you're really good at this, or you really know a lot about that, or I really appreciate you changed my life in this way. And then we're like, oh, I did? Really? And maybe that is a gift. Maybe that is something that I should pay more attention to and nurture. And
The subtitle of my book, The Acorn Principle, is Nurture Your Nature.
Tell us about the Acorn Principle. I'm aware of it. I would love for every listener to hear it as well.
Ta-da! That's a squirrel back there on the shelf. My former office manager, Carolyn Brown, gave me this, and it's I love this thing. It's made of wood, but it's such a beautiful model to use. An acorn has 3 parts: a stem, a cap, and a seed. Past, present, future. So this is the legacy that's come from all the acorns in your line who have ever existed back through history, all the way back. Good, bad, and the ugly, they all came through that into you. And they're in your DNA right there today. Okay, the cap, its job is to hold on to the seed until the seed's ready to grow on its own. So that's your coaches, your parents, your mentors, your guides, your role models, your heroes. And when you're ready to grow on your own, the seed holds not only the potential that's still in you, but it holds the potential that comes through a stem to every generation for the rest of time. So we have a role to play, and we have an opportunity and an obligation at the same time. And so this, as an acorn, would never be a cedar tree. It would never be a giant redwood, even if it went to redwood camp and learned the 5 redwood skills and the 7 habits of highly effective redwoods and all those. It would never make it. It would just be a maladjusted oak. So an acorn becomes an oak. A person becomes whatever they're destined for. And I don't mean destiny in a dream sense. I mean in a sense that you find your strengths and you apply them and expand and use them in a wise way. Become more of who you are so that you become a blessing to the world. Nurture your nature. Don't try to change your nature, because first, it won't work. And second, it's painful. It's not painful to grow along the path of your skills. It may be difficult, but it's kind of like working out. If that's painful, you're doing it wrong. So work out differently. It'll be difficult and your muscles might get sore, but if the exercise itself is painful, you're doing the exercise wrong.
That's right.
Just before we got on the air, I got down and did 70 push-ups just to get the blood flowing. I do that every day. I do 100, but not all at once. Sometimes I have to pause.
Well, good for you. And I say that because it is a part of the energy moving. We have like these 4 domains, yes, these 4 bodies, if you will, right? We've got the spiritual, which is all about the meaning, yes. And we've got the physical, of course, which you're moving that energy, as you shared, in some ways. And we've got the mental body, which is, for example, you listening to those audio recordings all those years ago, right? Feeding your mind with something that is positive and meaningful and relevant. And of course, we've got the emotional body, the permission to feel the feelings, and to be with them and to ask, as you trained us today, what's the worst that can happen? So we're wet, we dry off, right? And to help ease some of those deeply unconscious parts of us that may be fearing for our safety and just trying to protect us. And I think that the ability to become conscious of these different aspects of ourselves, right? We need to take care of our body, our emotional body, our mental body, and our spiritual body, is what allows the momentum to move. That's what my company is called Momentum Institute, for that reason. When there's more momentum, when the energy moves, there's more energy. And when there's more energy, then we can have more positive impact on others. We can co-create something more beautiful for our planet. And so I want to ask again, if you're willing to share a little bit more for those individuals that may still have some doubt, and it might be doubt about their ability to build on their nature, or maybe doubt about their nature, right? That they actually have a gift that is within them, right? And so what can you offer to those individuals that need some help to get moving?
Well, the least expensive thing that I do, not the direct mentorship, is I created a video course that's 16 short lessons, like 12 to 20 minutes at the most. So it's 4 hours total time. And it's called Professional Growth, Acorns to Oak Trees. And you can get, the whole thing for $99. So that's Coursify, COURSIFY.com. Course as in taking a course on leadership, right? Coursifyx.com. And then /acorns, and that'll take people to that. And that really is, when I'm mentoring people, I tell them that's mandatory. You have to go through that first. So if someone not interested in the mentorship, but they would like my input and they don't want to spend much, that's an easy way to do it. And let me add something else. You knew this was bound to come.
Oh.
I wrote a song that kind of goes with this. Ask yourself this daily question: how would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do? How would the person I'd like to be do the things I'm about to do? It's much better when you can see from a higher point of view. How would the person I'd like to be Do the things I'm about to do. If you want to build a better world, be a better you.
That is, so beautiful on so many levels. Obviously, the music itself. In addition to that, the message,
I had a room full of 1,000 Taiwanese singing that along with me.
Oh.
I had handed out or given them, the words in Chinese so that they could do it, and they were singing that. So we had that many voices doing that song. Let me do a piece of another one for you, because this is just to go with the theme of your program. If you could read my mind, love, what a tale my thoughts could tell. Just like an old-time movie about a ghost in a wishing well, in a castle dark or a fortress strong with chains upon my feet. You know that ghost is me, and I will never be set free as long as I'm a ghost that you can't see.
Wow. Wow. I'm speechless.
Oh, thank you.
And it makes my heart, so many emotions. So one of the things is immediate sadness for those individuals that, are those unseen ghosts, if you will. And at the same time, I know that they are 100% empowered and capable of becoming that which they deeply wish to become. And I know that for a fact. And they just need the how. They need the how, because oftentimes there's so much baggage, right, from the lineage and also from their own life. And there's like evidence of the things that haven't worked or what they can't do, right? And oftentimes we tend to focus on that and remember that, and yet everything is possible for them. And I think that's the mission of this life, is to connect with that. Because to your first beautiful song that you sang to us, I think that when we can become the best version of ourselves, the best us that we can be, we are a reflection of our whole world. There's also research on that, right? The holographic principle, and there's a lot of stuff out there. When we change, our perception of the world changes. In fact, our personal reality changes, and it really does start with us.
It's like selective perception. When you, let's say you buy a blue Chevrolet, all of a sudden you notice everywhere there's blue Chevrolets. Wow, I never realized how many were there. Well, you saw them, you just didn't notice them. Same thing's true in yourself. Whatever you look at the most is what, and if that's limits, then that's what you're going to think. But when you start realizing, wow, this was an exception, I did that pretty well. Well, I could do that twice, 3 times, 300 times, 1,000,000 times. I could scale that. So just find every little good act you've ever done, notice it, and duplicate it.
That's right. And as you said, listening to things, right? Your own programs, other people's, Earl Nightingale's, that is priming our mind to be able to see possibilities and to see the good in ourselves and in others. And
imagine if you listened every day to gangster rap. How would it condition you? Or if every day every weekend you were watching horror movies, or a more mundane soap operas, which dwell on all the dishonesty and the dark side of life. If you feed on that all the time, that's what you'll feel, and what you feel shows up in your life.
That's right. And this is why I truly believe that None of us are victims, if you will, in the sense that we can always own our response to situations, as dark as they may be, and we can begin to take steps, even baby steps, toward.
Again, I'm conscious of my interruptions, and I apologize for that.
I value them.
We are not enduring victims. We can be victimized. I've been the victim of theft, abuse, whatever, betrayal, things like that. But I didn't choose victim status. Victim was an experience. It's kind of like, if I'm angry, am I an angry person? No, I'm a person who's angry. So do I want to be an angry person? Then I'll practice this skill until it's excellent.
And many people do.
Yeah. And here's a quote for you. Worry is mentally rehearsing failure. What you rehearse, you become better at.
Very true. Very true. And I appreciate the distinction around kind of the victimhood, if you will, because it really is the meaning that we give to things in our lives. I mean, I know we talked about meaning in the context of, focusing on something that is meaningful for us that we want to build, and there's the meaning of a moment by moment meaning that we give to things.
Yeah.
And that story that we tell ourselves, of course, then impacts how we feel. And as you said, our world becomes a mirror of how we feel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, indeed. Feeling is so important. When people realize that emotion and intellect are not intertwined, they are parallel, and emotion affects intellect. Intellect very rarely affects emotion very much. It's like, I'm afraid. Well, don't be. Oh, why didn't I think of that? No, you're still going to be afraid. Hey, no, there's nothing to be afraid of. Stop being afraid. Well, that's trying to use intellect to interrupt an emotion. I'm afraid. Well, come here, honey. I'll take care of you. Look, whatever it is you fear is not there. Okay. All right. Thanks. Address emotion with emotion, and address intellect with intellect, and use intellect to surround emotion, but don't expect it to convert it.
That's right. That's right. Emotions will always win because it's a body thing. It's oftentimes the reason we feel what we feel because it's a protective mechanism of some sort. And so we need to just allow it and be with it. And as you said, count logic or intellect. And I think, again,
it goes necessarily give it a voice, because it could be a mean-spirited emotion. It could be a cynical or weakening kind of an emotion, that if you express it, it diminishes things with others.
And instead of giving it a voice, I think what's important is to give it compassion and love and curiosity.
Yeah. You can feel it, just you don't have to express. It's like everything you don't have to say everything you know, just because you know it. I have a bit of difficulty with that because I talk a lot. I don't know. I could go on with examples all day long and would like to, but I better not.
I think that, my heart right now is feeling just a great deal of joy and possibility for our planet, even with all of the things that are going on in our world as you and I meet here today. And I believe that because I think that the more of us that really get this message that you share with us today, and that apply even just some of the principles that you've taught us, to take some action to move toward that, I think that they will experience more of those elevated emotions for themselves, for others, and in doing so,
take their fear and anger away.
Exactly.
Fear is based in anger anyway. Yeah.
Yes.
Or most anger is based in fear. Excuse me. That's the way I meant it. Yeah.
It is, because it's a strategy, right, that we have for how to manage our not feeling safe on some deeper level. And this is where it gets to having more compassion for all of these parts of ourselves, right? It's not I'm an angry person. It's a part of me feels angry. And sometimes it's appropriate to feel angry, right? Something's been
Absolutely.
violated.
And sometimes it's appropriate to do nothing. Like one of the modes people find themselves in is passenger. And if you're a passenger on an airplane, behave like a passenger. Don't try to be a leader. Don't try to be a competitor. Don't try to be a critic. Just sit there and chill, right? But then when it's time to lead, step up. The four modes, this is knowing and doing. Sometimes very little doing is called for. Sometimes very little knowing is just fine. But the more you know, the more opportunities you see to act. But that doesn't mean you should. And when the time is right, you take that action. So here are the modes: passenger, low knowledge, low doing; critic, high knowledge, low doing; competitor, high doing, low knowing, or low thinking anyway. It's all about doing, execution. That's competitor. And then leader is a high level of awareness, high knowing, and a high level of performance, high doing. I call that the mastery grid. And I've got that in some of my books.
And as you asked that beautiful question, as you were singing that beautiful song to us, is, to ask ourselves around the doing, what would the person that I want to become do? How would they be? And to step into that and allow that to guide our decisions, our behaviors, because that is higher and that is divine. And it is guided, and it knows things that we may not know, and it knows how to heal ourselves and others.
Mm-hmm. Our better self awaits.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'm really giving you a big virtual hug.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Just so much gratitude for all the wonderful things that you have given to our world. And I'm so grateful all those years ago, almost 50 years ago, you wrote the word never. Because we all continue to get to benefit. And most importantly, you continue to benefit and to enjoy life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I look forward to getting up. I look forward to my next performance. Connecting with my coaching clients that I mentor. Like I had one this morning, and it was so satisfying to be able to look beyond the concerns she was having and to identify that something completely out of her consciousness was probably the source. It's like if someone's procrastinating, is that just laziness? Well, what's laziness? A desire for leisure? No, usually procrastination is an avoidance of something unpleasant. And the payoff of avoiding it is greater emotionally than the payoff of getting past it and having it done. So where'd that come from? And who knows, it could go, I'm not a counseling psychologist, but it could go all the way back to childhood where something happened and you think, well, I don't have whatever, one of those moments.
That's what it often does. Suffering is because of those attachments, and many of those attachments we're not even conscious of until we become conscious.
Also, a closing thought. Many of the life decisions we've made, like the ones I made 50 years ago, were made by somebody that doesn't have nearly the experience, the enlightenment, or the insight that we have today. So that's why I looked back at those old notes to see if any of it was still relevant, because I'd made so many decisions since then. I was astounded that I got some of it that clear at that early an age, because when I wrote that down, I hadn't given any speeches. I had presented at a meeting, a report or something, but that was it. I hadn't written a single book or workbook or anything like that. I had no business experience, no money in the bank. I was overweight and out of shape, no understanding of how the world worked. And I wrote that down. Wow. So desire really is the life force seeking to be expressed through us. And we need to listen to that. And then as we grow and mature, make better decisions if necessary, because what I dreamed of at first evolved differently over the years, but not that differently.
That's right. And as you said, focus on that desire and release any resistance, like the friends, for example, that you said that weren't, aligned with that, and other things, to release things that are not aligned with love and with compassion, of course, but to let things go. And that's a part of it as well. As you say yes to something, we may need to say no to some other things, and that's okay.
Well, and one of the most celebrated executive skills is the ability to say no rapidly and often to things that aren't relevant to what brings satisfaction and meaning to you. Yeah.
Yeah. Which is why, again, as you're saying, right, knowing ourselves, being the best that we can be, us, right? And knowing what's important to us, our values in an organization, what are the core values of the organization, and aligning every decision, not just some or when it's convenient, but every decision with that, even when it's painful. But having that integrity really preserves the integrity of the desire of the mission. And I believe that there are energetic forces that support us in creating that which we want when we are aligned.
That's true in my experience. The purpose of business or an organization is to make life better. And if you can't determine how your entity makes life better, then you either need a new endeavor or you need more study of that endeavor, because that's the kernel of potential. That's the acorn. And it all comes back to that question: how do we make life better for other people? Everybody in some way does that through the work that they provide.
That's right. That's right. It's the little decisions. And I heard you say in one of your talks, it might have been the TED Talk or one of the other many things that I've seen, sometimes it's even just picking up trash or, holding the door for someone, doing a kind deed. All of that is important, and it makes a difference for ourselves and for others.
Yep.
Well, I, again, thank you so deeply. How can people learn even more? Thank you for already what you've shared in terms of what we can access. How can people learn more about your speaking, your amazing mentoring opportunities, and everything?
The easiest thing in the world, if they can remember my name, Jim Cathcart, Cathcart. Jim Cathcart. If you do a search on that, you'll end up with my websites, my social media, list all kinds of YouTube videos. And I mean, there's just thousands upon tens of thousands of things out there that have been an echo of the work that I've done. And so I'm super easy to find. Just search Jim Cathcart or jimcathcart.com. That's my digital business card.
Beautiful. Cool. And one last question, if it's all right.
Yeah.
So for a new baby that's being born, if there was one piece of wisdom that you wish for them to know and embody, what might that be?
That you were intentional, not a biological coincidence. That the source of life intended for you to exist. That means you're important in the overall scheme of things. Now, you have the option to live unimportantly. You have the option to squander and waste that opportunity, but you also have the option to make an imprint that will echo through the ages with positive effect. So live fully.
Thank you. Thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. Thank you.